Why did the genie start a new business? Well, because he was used to granting wishes. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about how to get a grant to start a business. Listen, if someone comes up to you and they say, hey, I got some free money for you, it's probably a scam unless it's a small business grant. Because grants are literally free money that business owners can use during their startup phase of their company, during the growth expansion phase of their company, or even for additional research and development. But I want to be upfront with you because getting a startup grant can come with a few cons, such as number one, it takes time to find a grant that you can qualify for and actually give you the capital that you need. Number two, it also takes time for you to actually sit down and apply and then wait for correspondence from the grant officers. And number three, sometimes there are limitations with how you can use the grant money. Like for example, with the PPP loan or the PPP grant, you could only use that money on staff, rent, bills, etc. So you should be aware of some of these cons up front. That being said, I have compiled a small list of startup grants and credits that you can use to start your small business. Stay tuned. Hey there and welcome to our channel. I'm Sean with Life Accounting, the accounting company that saves people from high taxes and low profits. The goal today is to help you get your business up and running with grants to start a small business. Now, most people know what grants are, especially if you're subscribed to our channel, but for the small percentage of people who don't, let me quickly explain, number one, what is a grant and where do they come from? Okay, so a grant is basically money that is given to a business from a federal, state, or local government. You can also get a grant from private businesses or corporations who want to support their respective communities. Now, the great thing about grants is that they do not require any repayment whatsoever, which is ideal for any entrepreneur that has little cash available for their startup. But why in the world would these governments and corporations give away this free grant money? Well, typically a grant becomes available because a government agency or a nonprofit organization or a private corporation wants to address an area of concern which could be beneficial for them or come back to haunt them in the long term. For example, you'll see government agencies set aside money to support minority entrepreneurship in certain communities because, well, we fund the government with our tax dollars. And politicians run on the promise to help communities do better, and they actually need to make good on those promises. Or as another example, you'll see a corporation set aside grant money for research and development that will be instrumental to their industry and something that they can actually be able to capitalize and leverage later on inside of their corporation. And as another bonus for private businesses or corporations, of course, would be the tax deductions as well. So there you have it. That's what a grant is, and that's where the money comes from. And there's a few reasons why the corporations, the nonprofits, and the governments willingly give it away. Now, the second thing that we need to talk about is number two, what types of startups normally qualify for grants. Because listen, not everyone can get a startup grant. In fact, organizations that run grant programs want to make sure they're giving money to startups that actually deserve it and will put it to good use. And this is very important to remember, especially for later on when we talk about how to actually get and receive a startup business grant. Okay, but for now, you need to know there are usually three groups of startups who typically can get a grant. The first group is a business that belongs to a sort of niche industry and has proven strong potential for growth. For example, if there's an innovative startup that is building an app or a service, they could be awarded a technology grant. The second group will be a business that has a positive impact on the world or within a specific community. So for a great example here would be a company that creates a product that will create sustainable energy or green energy for the world, or a company that has a service that is built specifically to help minority children succeed in education. And the third group will be any startup founder or founders who belong to a marginalized group or have significant economic disadvantage that makes it harder for them to get ahead when it comes to business. For example, that could be a disabled veteran or a Black woman-owned business or a founder that has been disproportionately affected by a natural disaster, just to name a few. But these grants are typically issued to help level the playing field by giving people with an economic disadvantage equal access to funding. Now, if your company does not fit into one of these groups, you can absolutely still get a grant, but you're gonna have to work a little bit harder at finding the right one. Okay, let's go ahead and get into some grants. So the first grant I have on my list, grant number 1, is the Small Business Innovation Research Grant, or the SBIR grant. This grant is funded by the SBA that gives startups up to $250,000 in phase 1. And if phase 1 goes really well, then after about 6 months, recipients can get up to $1 million over 2 years during phase 2. Now, the eligibility requirements are perfect for startups, okay? You simply need to be, number 1, an organization for profit within the United States. Number 2, the business should be owned and controlled by a US citizen or a permanent resident by more than 50%. And lastly, number 3, have no more than 500 employees, including affiliates. Now, while almost anyone can apply, you need to know that this grant is focused on research and development within technology innovation. So this is one of those groups of grants that is focused on a specific industry. Now, of course, a major pro of this grant is that after being awarded, you can immediately get a contract with a government agency, which of course can secure long-term revenue, but as a con, it is highly competitive as well, so you must be very innovative. If you want to check out this grant, you can apply at sbir.gov. Moving on to grant number 2, but really quick before I go to grant number 2, if you appreciate this video and this type of content, please do me a huge favor by hitting the like button for the YouTube algorithm. It really helps to spread this video around to more people like you who want to learn about grants for startups. Okay, grant number 2 on my list is from the U.S. Economic Development Administration, or EDA for short. This agency has many available grants specifically to provide business owners with free tools and funding. And in my opinion, they have the best all-around program that provides grants to start a small business, because they work with a variety of different people in a variety of different industries. For example, right now they have a grant that is specifically geared for travel, tourism, and recreational startups, which is definitely difficult to find anywhere else. Now, because the EDA has such a well-rounded database of grants, that means that the eligibility requirements and the amounts differ from grant to grant. So you'll want to research before applying, of course. Now, the pros of going after EDA grants are there are so many to choose from, even at the state level. But the major con is that because they cast such a wide net, finding the right one, the right grant, may be a little bit overwhelming. Now, if you want to check this out, you can research and start applying at eda.gov/funding-opportunities. Okay, moving on to number 3, which is kind of like a grant, but it's really a credit, which is opportunity zones. Now, this is a tax credit that I actually have received during the startup phase of one of my businesses, and it helped us out tremendously because we were able to apply that credit to parking and office expenses. Well, basically, it's when you're operating a business in an area that needs more economic activity. And so in our case, our local government was willing to give our company $3,500 for each job we created within the opportunity zone. And we went on to create over 20 jobs in that area. So it definitely was a sizable credit, and it helped us a lot during our startup phase. So if you do have a startup, check with your local government and see if you can build a business in that opportunity zone to help offset some of those startup costs. Okay, grant number 4 on my list is the $100,000 SUD startup grant from the National Institute of Drug Abuse. This is one of those specific industry grants that applies to anyone who wants to build a startup to help with substance use abuse. So this fits into the group of grants that is specific to making a positive impact on the world or within a specific community. For this grant, there are 10 startups that are selected, and they each will get $10,000 to help fund their startup. And if you receive the SUD grant, then you will be automatically enrolled in other grant opportunities to help further your startup's development, which is super awesome as well. Now, this is a very niche grant, and I just have this here to show you an example of what a niche grant will look like. But if you are interested in this specific one, then I'll put text to where you can check it out below. Okay, moving on to grant number 5 on my list is the Back Black Businesses grant. Yes, I'm gonna say it, okay? Black entrepreneurs matter, okay? This is one of those group of grants that are specific to people who have a significant economic disadvantage due to their environment. And because of that, in order to be eligible, you need to be a Black-owned business. You need to employ between 3 to 20 people. You need to be in an economically vulnerable community, and you must have been harmed in some way by the pandemic. And if you qualify and win, then you could be awarded between $5,000 to $25,000. But even more importantly, you will receive free mentorship and business training from other experienced Black-owned entrepreneurs. And you can apply here at webackblackbusinesses.com. Now listen, there are hundreds of other grants out there. Okay, I just went over 5 to share you some examples and get you to start thinking about some startup grants for your business. But by no means is this even close to being an exhaustive list. So definitely take your time and try to find more. However, on the other hand, if you're having an extremely hard time finding a grant that suits your business needs, there are alternative sources of funding, such as getting a bank loan, getting a line of credit, or finding a traditional investor. Now, Crystal made a great video talking about small business grants for women, so definitely make sure you check that out coming up next. Or you can check out my other video on how to successfully win a small business grant, and we'll see you over there.